Back in 2018, BMW introduced a new entry-level coupe-style SUV to their lineup called the X2. Now, as a sibling to the smaller X1, this is essentially designed to be a sleeker and sportier version of a very popular model for BMW. Now, of course, we saw a brand new X1 introduced to America back in 2022. So, of course, for 2024, BMW is following up with the all-new second generation of the X2. As you can see, it's built off of the same new architecture that also underpins the new X1, and it gets a much improved styling dynamic here, more power under the hood, and a much larger footprint on the outside, giving this thing far more interior space versus the original first generation X2. So as you can see, this week, BMW has loaned us this skyscraper gray X2 xDrive28i, and the big question I went answered for those of you who are looking for an entry-level BMW SUV that has a lot more distinctive looks. How does the latest generation X2 stack up? Stay tuned to find out. So before we start talking about the all-new styling for this second generation X2, I thought I'd pop the hood and show you guys what's powering this thing. Now, this model that I'm showing you here is the entry-level version known as the xDrive28i, which means you have a standard 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. Now, underneath this hood, you're going to probably notice one distinction that will probably either annoy a lot of BMW enthusiasts, or if you guys aren't enthusiasts, you won't even notice. The engine is mounted transversely, and that's because this is built off of a front-wheel drive architecture that also underpins the latest Mini Countryman. Now, of course, in this BMW, this 2-liter turbocharged gasoline direct injection 4-cylinder doesn't have any kind of mild hybrid electrical assistance, but the power outputs are pretty solid this year: 241 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. If you guys require more power, there's an M35i version that basically has this engine with the boost turned up to produce 312 horsepower, but the same 295 foot-pounds of torque. It all goes out through a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, and the company's xDrive all-wheel drive system is actually standard. There's no front-drive variant, at least here in the US. So even though this is a front drive platform, all of these cars come standard with all-wheel drive. Fuel economy is rated at 24 in the city, 33 on the highway. That's around a 1 mpg reduction versus the X1 with the same powertrain. It has roughly a 14-gallon fuel tank. You'll do around 400 miles of range theoretically, going by the EPA figures. Now, BMW claims 0 to 60 happens in 6.2 seconds. We'll test it out, of course, with our timing equipment when we get out on the road. It has a top speed of around 149 miles an hour. This vehicle is not recommended to tow by BMW, at least. And then as this car sits, it weighs in at just over 3,800 pounds. It's around 150 pounds heavier versus a BMW X1. But let's go ahead and close up this hood here and talk about the exterior styling. Now, this particular one that I'm showing you is painted in skyscraper gray metallic. I believe it's a $650 extra color. I personally wouldn't go for this color. It's a little bit too mundane, especially when you consider the styling of this car. You can see the hood has some really interesting creases and bulges. I really like some of the creases here that kind of elongate and accentuate the BMW badge right there. You can see the headlights. These are the standard full LED headlights with BMW's signature new light signature. It also has LED low and high beams. The LED turn signals, I will say, look a little bit strange. I don't love the way they fade in and fade out. BMW has been doing that in all their newer models. It almost just looks like, at least on camera or in person, like there's a malfunction somewhere in the headlights. You can see my test car has the M Sport package, so it has the twin kidney grills accented in black with the silver outline. You can see down here it also gets more black and some larger air intakes with some active grille shutters, some also functional air intakes there. No fog lights on the vehicle, but overall you can see the car either looks aggressive or it looks a little bit frumpy to me. I just can't decide on the exterior design, but let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. Now, moving around the side profile, you can see the one thing about the old X2 is it pretty much just looked like a hot hatch that was barely sitting up any higher. The new X2 definitely has more of an SUV profile, but it also got significantly longer as well. It has a 106.1-inch long wheelbase. It's an inch longer than before. It's now 179.4 inches long. So this is around 2 inches longer than the X1, but it's also around 8 inches longer than the previous generation X2. So it's significantly bigger. It's also around 2 inches wider. And around almost 3 inches taller as well in the overall height. So that's definitely giving you more SUV proportions. You can see my test car also has this attractive double 5-spoke 19-inch wheel. You can also get it with a kind of a gold coppery finish. It's riding on a 245 by 45 R19 Michelin all-season tire. You have an all-independent adaptive suspension when you guys go for the M Sport package. And then if you guys go for the M35i, BMW will also sell you their M Sport brakes, which will increase the rotor size. You'd also give you like a 4-piston rotor design. I like the full paint finish here. It definitely gives it a more sleeker, attractive look. You can see the mirrors are power folding. Full 360 camera included on this model with the premium package. And then you can see that premium package also rolls in a fixed panoramic glass roof. The one thing this car is missing are roof rails. Raised roof rails, and that's what I think is giving this car a really awkward look, especially from this angle here. But you can also see it definitely has more of that swoopy coupe slope profile in the rear, which the old X2 didn't have. It looked more like a hatchback as opposed to an SUV. This definitely looks more attractive. I think it looks better from this angle here versus from the front. The front, I'm just not sure I'm in love with the design, but from here, this definitely gives me like baby X4 or X6 vibes to it, which I like. You can see the sloping rear glass. Doesn't offer a rear window wiper, but you have this integrated spoiler. You have a full LED taillight design with a much better looking LED turn signal at the back versus the sequential that you see at the front. Down here at the lower rear fascia, no visible exhaust tips. You can see it just has a more aggressive rear diffuser. Lots of badging back here, including the xDrive28i badge. And then if you want to open up the trunk, you push up on the BMW logo here. That opens up the trunk. You can see the trunk space got significantly bigger as well this year because of the increase in size. It measures around 25.3 cubic feet of space, just a smidge smaller than the X1, which is definitely nice. There's some storage over here, storage over there. Look underneath here, you can see there is a temporary spare, so you don't have to deal with a fix-a-flat kit or run flat tires. If you fold down the second row seats, it expands the cargo to around 51 cubic feet of space. So that's around a 6 cubic feet reduction versus the X1. But again, that's expected due to the sloping roof, but it does offer significantly more cargo space versus its predecessor, which was, again, more like a hot hatch. So the exterior of the X2 certainly has a much more unique look to it versus the previous generation, but what about the interior? This is where BMW also made some big upgrades, especially if you're coming from the old model. Before we get inside, however, let me show you guys the key fob. You can see this is the standard Intelligent Access BMW key fob. It certainly is a nice looking key. I like the metal and piano black accents with the BMW M colors on it. It has remote start from the fob. If you push the lock button, the BMW logo 3 times in sequence, it'll remote start the vehicle. It has your usual unlock, power liftgate, and panic function. BMW also offers your phone as a key if you guys are an owner, which is also a nice touch. And BMW also offers a walk-away lock and auto lock function. So as I have the key fob in my pocket, I approach the vehicle, you can see the doors will unlock for me automatically. It'll unfold the mirrors. If I walk away from the car, the doors will also lock for me as well. You can see the door handles. These are the newer, I don't love this style of door handle, but we've seen these on something like the new BMW 4 Series. But as you open up the door, you can see my particular test car has the skyscraper gray exterior with the black and red two-tone Veganza. This is their newest soft or faux leather material. It's a leatherette material, which definitely has a really nice look to it. I like the sport bucket design theme that you get here with the X2, which is nice. The two-tone also looks nice. These seats adjust, I believe, in 14 different ways. They are heated, but sadly, BMW does not offer ventilated seats. You also get 2-person memory here on the driver's side. But again, the interior looks pretty nice. The door panel has some nice upgraded leatherette stitching here on the upper portion with this kind of cool geometric pattern for this lower portion of the stitch. You have aluminum accents for the door handle, aluminum covering the Harman Kardon stereo system, aluminum here, padded armrest over here. Down here it is hard touch plastic, which is expected. The windows are one touch up down for all 4. They have a high quality tactile feel to them. And it definitely makes a great first impression when you open up the door of the new X2. Now getting inside, you can see this vehicle has that traditional, slightly higher SUV step-in height for a crossover. As I shut the door has a nice solid sounding thunk, which gives you a nice impression of quality. Now, once you're inside the vehicle, the start-stop button is located here on the center console. Push that, you can hear it has a traditional starter noise for that 2-liter turbo 4. Again, this is not a hybrid or a mild hybrid, so it has a more traditional sound and feel to it. As I start poking around the rest of this interior, you can see all X2s are going to come standard with their latest iDrive infotainment system. So this is basically one pink single piece of glass, which is slightly curved, but it's comprised of 2 separate screens. You have a 10.25-inch screen here in the instrument panel, and then a 10.7-inch display here in the center stack. This is also running BMW's latest iDrive 9 infotainment software system, which they've upgraded from iDrive 8.5 and as well as iDrive 8. Obviously, in terms of the dashboard materials, you can see that stitching and soft touch paneling carries over onto the upper portion of the dash. I like the heads-up display that you can get there as well. The X2 comes with the M Sport specific steering wheel if you check that option box for it, which includes the paddles on the wheel, a boost function, which will give you 10 seconds of overboost to get maximum power. I like the M badging here. I also like how thick rim this feels. It has a nice 9-3 grip. You have your driver assistance professional package, which includes hands-free traffic jam assist at low speed, which is nice. You also have a manual tilt and telescoping steering wheel, which offers a good amount of adjustability and range. And then the horn, it sounds nice. It doesn't sound like a puny horn, despite the fact that this car is their entry-level SUV. And then over here you can see there's this really interesting aluminum crosshair material here. This is an actual aluminum trim with this kind of like cool red and gray intersecting line theme to it, which I think looks really nice. It looks really nice as well with the ambient lighting at night. You can also change the color of the ambient lighting, which it glows on the dash, on the door panels, and the footwells. It certainly looks good. Down here you can see this center console area houses your wireless phone charging pad, which has like a little bit of like a seat belt buckle to like hold your phone into place when you're driving aggressively. There's some piano black trim here. The dash vents are also traditional. I very much appreciate that. Down here you can see in the center stack you can access your drive mode selector. If I push that, it'll access your personal, sport, and efficient drive modes, which is really nice how BMW actually just kind of gives you 3 drive modes. Now if you go into the sport mode here, you can go into like an actual custom setting here if you want to adjust the stability control, the steering response, the drivetrain response, which is all, you know, pretty nice that you typically find with BMWs. This controls your 7-speed dual clutch transmission, which as you can see is a really small little toggle to actually control it. If you put the vehicle into reverse, you can see it also gives you a full 360 camera, which is definitely nice to see. It gives you your top-down view. It has your parking sensors front and rear, which is nice. And then you can see over here, this controls your volume controls, along with some other things. You have your cup holders down here, more storage down here, and you can also open this up. You can see that gives you a little bit more storage, which is also really nice. You can see going back to over here, this vehicle does include wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. As you can see, you can basically, you know, wirelessly mirror your phone, which I really like the resolution and the quality. It looks good. It takes up mostly the entire screen. There's also some traditional or some actual buttons here that always stay fixed into position, which is nice. And then you can access your climate control through the screen. You can see there's dual zone climate control, no ventilated seats. If you want to access the heated seats, they're located here along with the heated steering wheel. It's 3 different levels, but I really think at this price point, BMW should offer ventilated seats. It's a feature that I think a lot of people definitely would prefer to see. If you go here, you can see this is where you can access the latest BMW iDrive 9 software. You can see it has lots of widgets and icons where you can access through here. BMW has kind of updated the layout a little bit. This is where you can access, you know, all of your usual settings. You can access your live vehicle information, your My Modes, the sound information, seat comfort, all that stuff. This is relatively easy to use, but there's still a little bit of a learning curve. So I don't love the way this can actually, when you first get into this vehicle, I noticed that it takes a second for the system to start up. But once it does, it's relatively quick and snappy. But again, iDrive 9, you know, can be updated wirelessly via an over-the-air update if you guys, you know, if BMW has some software updates to push toward the vehicle. So that's definitely, you know, a nice feature to have. Down here, I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of additional storage. Push that little button, this opens up to reveal a very shallow storage compartment. That's because all the additional storage is exposed and open down here. Not sure how I feel about that. I would have preferred to see a deeper center console area. You can see there's 2 USB-C charging ports there, which is nice. And then you can see the seats, the Veganza, the fake leather feels almost like real leather. I also appreciate the thigh extender over here. The seats more aggressively bolstered, and they're also comfortable and supportive. So I think that's going to be, you know, great for those longer road trips. Opening up the glove box, you can see it's damped but not lined with felt. It's huge. It goes right into the dash, which is nice. You have an auto dimming rear view mirror here. There's an interior camera here, which is supposedly supposed to watch, you know, the driver's face to make sure he's paying attention. And I believe you can also take selfies with that camera, although I couldn't access it here in the infotainment display. Despite the fact that I was looking for it, I couldn't really find it, although I guess I could find, if I type in camera here, let's see if I can find it, and no. So not really sure how to access that. Let me know in the comment section below if you guys are an owner of this vehicle, you know how to access the interior camera function. But overall, the interior definitely has a nice high quality feel to it. Not a single squeak or rattle. I like the design of the interior. You can also see out of the front and the sides relatively well. So overall, even though this is an entry-level model, it does make a relatively great first impression. But let's go ahead and hop into the backseat area of the X2. As you can see over here, The back seat offers pretty generous amounts of space, especially if you guys are coming from the previous generation. Now, obviously, when this is sloping here, it does eat into your headroom space. BMW didn't quote an actual legroom figure, at least not that I could find, but I do know that the legroom in the X1 is around 37 inches. So I would expect this to be similar, even though it's going to have less headroom than the X1. You can see rear door panel materials have the same leather stitching here with the cross stitching, or with the contrast stitching with that interesting geometric pattern. You have some metal accents here and here, which is nice, padded over here, a little bit of storage down here, which is nice. And then in terms of the seats, you can fold these seats down here, and it looks like you can also recline it slightly. So if you fold it down, you can see that expands the cargo area quite nicely, and it also gives you the ability to do that. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but again, pull that strap there. It does give you a slight recline, not really, but it's nice that they do give you that, you know, small little option. If I get back here, you can see this is essentially where I'd have the front seat to drive as I shut the door. And, you know, and for the space back here, I have to say, if this is actually 37 inches, it doesn't feel like it is. It feels more like it's 34 inches. It could have less versus the X1. There's good foot space underneath here. If I wanted to cross my legs, it's a little bit tight. Again, I'm 5'7", so I'm not the tallest person. There are some rear seat air vents back here, which I appreciate too. USB-C charging ports, a little bit of storage down here. You have 2 storage cubbies in each of the front seat backs. And then if you fold down this armrest, you can see there's an armrest with 2 cup holders, which is nice. In terms of the headroom space, I'm 5'7", and you can see my hair gets pretty close to the ceiling. I have maybe like 2 inches of additional space. So if you guys are over 6 feet, you're definitely going to want to choose the X1 instead. But overall, compared to the previous generation, this back seat is certainly much more livable, especially for average size adults. So here we are behind the wheel of the all-new second-generation BMW X2. When an all-new X1 came out about 1.5 years ago, we knew that a new version of the X2 was coming, because remember, the 2 vehicles share the same architecture. This is supposed to be the swoopy coupe version of the car. I also had a chance to spend a week last week with the Mini Countryman S, which essentially is this same platform. This is, remember, built off of a front-wheel drive Mini architecture. And this vehicle in general just has a wonderful feel to it. Very sporty. It's come standard, of course, with xDrive all-wheel drive. The one that we're driving is the xDrive28i, which means we have a 2-liter turbo 4 hooked up to a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. This is the 3rd time that I've had a chance to sample this powertrain combination. Now, with 241 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, this is definitely powerful for a base engine. There's even a more powerful M35i version that makes like 312 horsepower. BMW claims this model should get to 60 in 6.2 seconds. I have not been able to match that time in the X1 nor in the Mini Countryman, although the X1 did it in like 6.6 seconds on this stretch of road. It lacked launch control and paddle shifters because it didn't have the M Sport package. So let's go ahead and see what we can get this time. I have it in Sport everything. We'll go ahead and we'll engage the boost function here. Definitely shifts firmer in this mode. Wow. We got 5.85 seconds there. So with the boost function engaged when it's in Sport Plus everything, it definitely feels quicker off the line. Now, the one thing I definitely noticed is it didn't really tell me that there was a launch control initiated. What I'll do though is I had the stability control in its Sport Plus setting. I'm gonna turn the stability control off this time, and let's see if that actually will help this thing engage the launch control. Remember, when you have the M Sport package, it includes the boost function where you basically can pull the left paddle shifter and that'll engage maximum power, and it should also unlock a launch control function, which is, you know, necessary for the quickest acceleration times. And I have to say, this dual clutch, I don't love it around town driving, but when you have it in sport mode, it's certainly much more potent. Sport boost, it's building the boost. Very nice. Oof, quick shifts. 6.2 seconds there. That's with it more going slightly uphill. I'll try it up ahead again and see if we can get a slightly quicker time than 5.8, but definitely much more or much quicker feeling versus the X1 that I tested that had the X-Line package. So I highly recommend it. If you guys are enthusiasts, make sure you check the box for that M Sport package with the M Sport Professional package, because it definitely makes a difference in the acceleration in this car. Now, in terms of the handling dynamics, this car is driving on the 19-inch wheels. We've got a 245 wood tire. It's got the M adaptive suspension. And check this out, guys. It feels a lot like a sports sedan. I mean, there's very little to no body lean. The steering is so quick and direct. It feels good. I like the way this car feels. I also like the, just the plantedness that you get along with these M Sport seats. They hold you in place nicely. Keep in mind, again, there is an M35i model that gives you an extra 71 horsepower. BMW claims that model will do 60 in 5.2 seconds, which I suspect it can probably do it in under 5 seconds. Granted that I just got a quicker than the 6.2 time that BMW quotes for this particular powertrain. So that's a nice improvement. I really like how this model actually feels quicker than or it actually accelerated quicker than the, BMW time would suggest. That's typically how the Germans are. The engine sound that this thing makes is a little bit augmented. There's an iconic sound, setting that you can turn on and off. I don't love the sound of this. I really want to drive the M35i version to see if it's significantly better. This is a front-wheel drive based all-wheel drive system, and you definitely notice that it feels a little bit, front drive heavy. You can feel a little bit of understeer. It doesn't send enough power to the back to get the tail to step out like you would expect in some rear drive based BMWs. But I like the fact that all-wheel drive is standard, so again, you don't have to deal with the fact that they do offer a front drive version in other markets, but not here in America, which I think is really, really nice. But let's go ahead and try another 0 to 60 here. I'm still in sport everything. I'm gonna basically pull the left paddle. That'll engage the launch of the boost function. It lets you rev up to around 2,500. Oof. Very nice. 5.85 there, so it doesn't actually say launch control in the actual display here, but what you do get is, the ability to rev the engine up to around 2,500 RPM, which is nice. It really helps this thing get out of the hole, which is good because I'll switch the drive mode here into its personal setting or comfort setting, whatever, and I'll put the transmission back into its drive mode. It's actually spinning the tire out there a little bit. In this mode, this is where most people are going to drive it. The dual clutch shifts pretty quickly. It shifts also relatively smoothly. But again, there is something that I can't stand about this dual clutch that I noticed in the X1. Less so in the Mini Countryman, however, but it has an annoyance of a hesitation and lag when you're first getting off the line. Now, it's basically a combination of turbo lag and the lag that you get from the dual clutch because, that's just the nature of a dual clutch transmission. In this mode, the steering gets a little bit lighter, the suspension gets a little bit softer, visibility out of the X2 is good out of the front, the side, although this pillar is a little bit thick. The view out of the back is definitely compromise from the slope, and BMW does not offer a digital camera rearview mirror, which would be nice. But overall, the seats, I found this Veganza, this fake leather, to be very comfortable and supportive. The leather also feels almost like real leather. The one thing that this car is missing, annoyingly, is ventilated seats. You can't get ventilated seats in this car or the X1 or the Mini Countryman, which I think is a mistake. BMW should be offering it in this particular class, especially even though, we are at the entry-level game here. In terms of driver assistance tech, this car is available with the driver assistance professional package, where it has adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, traffic jam assist. I had a chance to use it briefly. It works perfectly fine. It's about a $1,700 upcharge if you want it. It should be standard, to be honest. BMW, makes you pay extra for their upgraded driver assistance tech. You do have automatic emergency braking and lane keep as standard, which is nice. In terms of quietness in this mode, the interior stays pretty quiet, actually. There's very little road and wind noise. You hear a little bit of the engine's note, the four-cylinder note, which is either pleasant or unpleasant, depending on what you're used to. Again, I'm looking forward to driving the M35i version to see if it has a much more snarlier sounding engine note. But in terms of the fuel efficiency, this car is rated at 2433. In my week's worth of driving, I averaged just under 25 mpg, and that's in mostly stop-and-go city traffic. In the highway, I got around 31 mpg, so not quite the 33, which is usually, which is unusual. BMWs tend to do better, especially on the highway, than its numbers would suggest. This is not a mild hybrid or anything like that, so it just kind of, drives like a normal car. In terms of range, I was getting around 350 miles of real-world range on a full tank. This, remember, is recommended to run on regular or premium. I believe the M35i, you have to actually use premium fuel to get the best performance. But overall, I really like the way this car feels. I like the way it drives. I just don't love the transmission. I think the transmission needs a little bit better programming, especially at low speeds where it can be a little bit laggy and jerky. But once it gets going, it feels fast. I like the, sport boost function that you get with this model. It definitely, is going to be fast enough for most people with its sub 6 second 0 to 60 time. But overall, if you want a small subcompact SUV, although this is basically the size of an X3 from the early generations, this one definitely has a more unique look to it. I just don't know if it's worth the extra money versus an X1 or even the Mini Countryman. I really liked the Mini Countryman, the mini version of this car. But again, if you must have the sportiest offering and you like the BMW X2 styling, this vehicle is certainly worth a look. So last year when I had a chance to spend a full week with the all-new third generation X1, I was pretty impressed with the overall package, especially when you look at the design of the X1, how much interior space it has, the new technology that BMW introduced. What I didn't love about that vehicle was the dual clutch transmission. After spending the week driving the X2, the coupe-ified version of that car, I have to say most of my initial impressions from the X1 have carried over onto this vehicle. Obviously, if you guys want more style, the X2 certainly delivers that with its sportback design at the rear. It certainly has that X6, baby X6 vibe to it. In terms of sportiness, it certainly lives up to the BMW nameplate with sporty handling, great steering, great suspension tuning, and also the engine with the dual clutch and the M Sport package delivers a solid 0 to 60 run in under 6 seconds, which is a good half a second faster versus the X1 that I tested last year, which only had the X-Line package, which means it lacked the launch control and the upgrades that you got to the transmission and the software programming. In terms of the ride quality, this is also a relatively comfortable ride. BMW has definitely improved that from the previous generation. Also is relatively quiet on the inside. But really, what perplexes me about the X2 is just why would you pick this over an X1? Aside from the fact that it's different, BMW also just recently announced they discontinued the X4, so this will now be the entry-level coupe-ified SUV, and you have to step all the way up to the X6, which is a pretty big price gap. But with this increase in size, BMW is confident that this should also effectively replace the X4 as well. In terms of pricing, if you guys are looking to get your hands on the X2, this vehicle is a little bit more expensive versus an X1, starting at a base price of $42,000 for this model here, including the standard all-wheel drive. Of course, if you guys want the M35i version, which gives you over 310 horsepower, you're going to look to spend around at least $51,500. So it's almost 10 grand more to go for the M35i version. My tester here with the premium package, the M Sport package, the driver assistance professional package, the upcharge for the color, and of course destination comes in at around $52,195. So just over 50 grand for an entry-level coupe-ified SUV. Sounds like a lot of money, and it certainly is, but it's also relatively well priced when you look at the Mercedes-Benz equivalent, which I would say would be a GLA, although the GLA, again, isn't quite as sleek, sporty, or roomy as this vehicle, nor as powerful. The Audi Q3 is also suffering the same issues. There's not really a competitor to this vehicle, unless, of course, you look at like a Range Rover Evoque, which is definitely not my favorite. So if you guys must have an entry-level subcompact luxury SUV that has the coupe-ified looks, this is definitely one of the only games in town, but I really want to get my hands on the M35i version, and I really want BMW to work on the transmission tuning, especially at low speeds. It just has a little bit too much lag for me unless you drive it in sport mode all the time, which you can, but you're definitely going to notice that if you're coming from something with a much more responsive, electric or electrified feel. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2024 BMW X2. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.